Yo, what is up, guys? Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hope you guys are doing well. Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence Jr. to me is a very interesting fight. And since Errol Spence fought Sean Porter, he had that back and forth war, had a few struggles. A lot of people have been speculating in regards to this potential fight, and I really wanted to share my 2 cents on the matter. Obviously, first and foremost, it's a fight I would love to see. Ultimately, it would be a unification fight. You know, both guys are top 5 in the welterweight division, and stylistically, I believe it would be a really interesting fight. Now, obviously, it looks like Errol Spence Jr. is fighting Danny Garcia in January. I don't really have a problem with that fight, if I'm being honest. I've made a video about it previously. I quite like the fight. I think it's fairly risky. While it's not the fight I would like to see most, I've got no problem with it. You know, for me, Danny Garcia is an elite level fighter and a guy who's not going to lie down for nobody. So no problem with that fight in itself. And that just really means if this fight between Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. does happen, you would imagine it would be middle of next year, you know, maybe the summer. By the time Manny Pacquiao would be 41 years old. And that in itself just really goes to show the greatness of Manny Pacquiao. The fact we are still talking about this man fighting elite level welterweights at 41 years old. Bear in mind, this guy really isn't a welterweight, if we're being honest with ourselves. You know, Manny Pacquiao is smaller than all of the other contenders at welterweight. So yeah, for me it just really goes to show the greatness of Manny Pacquiao. The fact he's still going and still operating at this level is just testament to his ability as a fighter, as an athlete, and it's testament to his standings in the all-time great rankings. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, the man beat Keith Thurman at 40 years old. That's some victory, as far as I'm concerned, and that proved he can still operate at this level. And in a fight with Errol Spence Jr., listen man, if it's the same Manny Pacquiao from the Keith Thurman fight, that's a very tough fight for Errol Spence Jr. If anybody is under the illusion that Errol Spence Jr. just walks through Manny Pacquiao, you're deluded. I mean, you should have already realised that, you know, you made that mistake with Sean Porter. A lot of people were saying he was going to walk through Sean Porter. It didn't happen. And it wouldn't happen against a 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao, despite him being years past his best. I think Manny Pacquiao stylistically gives Terence Crawford a lot of problems. Now, the Sean Porter fight, for example, a lot of people were kind of praising Sean Porter for his rugged type of style, his aggression, things of that nature, and I can see why. You know, they are, you know, 2 of his main attributes. But the thing for me that gave Errol Spence Jr. the most problems were the quick feet of Sean Porter and the angles of which he was attacking. You know, he was setting it up with that double jab coming in from an angle, and Errol Spence Jr. really struggled to come to grips with that fast foot movement and the angles of attack from Sean Porter. And Manny Pacquiao, even at 41 years old, still brings that as well as any other fighter in the division. You know, he'll step around you, he'll come in at angles, blazing hand speed, he'll get in and out. And for a guy like Errol Spence Jr., that style naturally will pose him problems. Errol Spence Jr. is not good punching on the move, you know. He really needs to set his feet to punch. And we saw Sean Porter exploit that in large periods of their fight. And Manny Pacquiao, for me, can do the exact same thing. He's obviously got quicker hands than Sean Porter, throws better combinations, and his foot speed is not far off either. I think he can replicate a similar game plan in terms of giving Errol those angles. And especially early on when Manny Pacquiao is fresh, I wouldn't be shocked if that fight were to happen, that Manny Pacquiao pieces Errol Spence Jr. up in the early rounds. You know, similar to how he was against Keith Thurman. Obviously, Keith Thurman, totally different fighter. I appreciate that. But when Manny Pacquiao was fresh, he was really beating Keith Thurman up. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something similar against Errol Spence Jr. in a potential fight. The problem for Manny Pacquiao for me would be the second half of the fight, against a much bigger, younger welterweight in their prime. A guy who's not been through the wars that Manny Pacquiao's been through. We saw against Keith Thurman. Now, Manny Pacquiao, for me, clearly won the fight. But in the second half of the fight, I felt Manny Pacquiao slowed it down. I wouldn't say dramatically, but certainly in a noticeable fashion. And in that moment, that gives Errol Spence Jr. the time to, claw back a deficit he may have on the scorecards. And against a young, big guy like Spence, those last 6 rounds would be very tough for a 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao. I'm sure Manny Pacquiao could tough it out and get to the distance, but would he win many rounds in the second half of a fight against Errol Spence Jr.? That's where I would be concerned for Manny Pacquiao in that fight, down the stretch, the last 6 rounds, as the fight goes on, against a bigger dude in Errol Spence Jr. And Errol Spence Jr., as we know, very physical, very rugged. He can work the body, he can slow you down, he can get dirty, as we saw versus Sean Porter. And eventually that sort of style can take its toll, especially if you're in Manny Pacquiao's position where he's 41 years old and had God knows how many fights, God knows how many tough fights. So for me, that fight would be a fight of 2 halves. I think Manny Pacquiao would comprehensively win the first 5-6 rounds. And after that, when he starts to tail off, that's when Errol Spence Jr. would, get back into the fight. I think the fight itself, obviously not stylistically, but it could have similar dynamics to Antonio Margarito versus Miguel Cotto. When Cotto was boxing Margarito up in the first few rounds, and then Margarito came on strong to rally and get a late stoppage. I could see a similar scenario in this potential fight. Not necessarily Spence getting a stoppage, but maybe doing enough to win a close decision, or maybe get a late stoppage, who knows. But what I'm saying is, I think the fight itself is intriguing, stylistically, and I think it would be a very competitive fight. Prime for prime, I've got to be honest, I think Manny Pacquiao would style on Errol Spence Jr., to be honest with you. I think he'd beat the hell out of him, but, that version of Manny Pacquiao doesn't exist anymore, despite how good he looked against Keith Thurman. So for me, it's a very interesting fight. Of course, Manny Pacquiao is at that stage of his career where he could get old overnight. Like I said, 41 years old, had all of these tough fights. That could happen, don't get me wrong. But if Manny Pacquiao is in the same condition he was against Keith Thurman, bro, I'm telling you now, Errol Spence Jr. is not walking through Manny Pacquiao. You would be deluded to think so. And for me, again, I will reiterate, that just goes to show the greatness of Manny Pacquiao. We've got a 41-year-old welterweight past his prime, fighting out of his weight class. And this dude is still doing more, or if not equaling, his younger compatriots. Now, Errol Spence Jr., he fought Sean Porter, good win. He's fighting Danny Garcia next. That'd be a nice little run of fights. But for me, 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao, he's matching these guys. And if I was Errol Spence Jr., or Danny Garcia, or Terence Crawford, or Keith Thurman, that really wouldn't sit well with me. To be, not showing as much ambition as a 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao. A lot of these guys need to step their games up and take a leaf out of Manny Pacquiao's book. Now, if you followed this channel, this is not a Manny Pacquiao fan channel by any means. I'm just telling you how it is. Manny Pacquiao still has that ambition to fight the likes of Keith Thurman, and he'll fight anybody. These guys need to stop playing A side, B side, and C side, whatever. They need to get these fights on, and they need to fight amongst themselves to, to really come out on top, kind of thing. For one guy to be the main man, and for Manny Pacquiao to still be willing to fight these guys, just goes to show his greatness. For me, Manny Pacquiao can really do what he wants now. As a boxing fan, he's in a unique position for me because he's gave me so many great fights. He owes me nothing at this point, as far as I'm concerned. If Manny Pacquiao wants to fight Mikey Garcia next, no real problem from me. If it's good enough for Errol Spence Jr., it's good enough for Manny Pacquiao as far as I'm concerned. But there we go, just my 2 cents. I like the idea of Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. I think it's a competitive fight. and one I would certainly like to see. Now, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Errol Spence Jr. But, like I said, very competitive and a fight that I wouldn't be shocked if Manny Pacquiao rewound the clock once again and got the win. So, those are my 2 cents on this potential fight. Somebody in my comments on the Danny Garcia video asked my opinion on this fight, and there you have it. I'd like to see it, and if it happens, I'll be stoked. Share your thoughts below. Peace.